When you think of Steven Furtick of Elevation Church, what comes to mind? Do you think he's the most prophetic and profound teacher in the 21st century? Or do you have concerns or questions? In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys two examples of recent sermons that he gave from Elevation Church that it's not like they're majorly alarming, but there are some red flags and some concerns that we should be having because of how he proof texts something or uses a certain nuance that is not necessarily compounded in the text. Let me give you an example of this. This is a sermon he gave in Matthew chapter 20 about two blind men. Take a listen.
Original language. This is something somebody put in a study Bible to tell you this is a new section. But the Bible isn't like Netflix with chapter titles and, the Bible doesn't have track IDs. The Bible is just written. There's no chapter and verse divisions, and there are certainly no subject headings. So what was written here, I want to talk about for a moment. And I want us to think about for a moment. And the reason that I wanted it to be on the screen is so that you can see it for yourself. And I have a question. It says, 2 blind men received sight. And here's my question. If this happened, why are they still called that? If they received their sight, it stands to reason that they are no longer blind. I would like to suggest that we retitle this passage. Don't change the passage, just call it what actually happened. Maybe instead of calling this chapter 2 blind men received their sight, because if they see, they're no longer blind. But people will memorize how they met you and call you that for the rest of your natural days.
See, that's my point right there.
How about we call this passage not 2 blind men receive sight? Watch this. Can I do this? Am I going to get in trouble? Am I in trouble? No, I don't think I'm going to get in trouble because I think we need to call it 2 bold men. How you like that, devil?
I mean, the whole thing about how do you like that devil? Number one, we don't talk to the devil like that and bring him up in a sermon like that. So again, this is known, my friends, as selective use of meaning. What that means is selecting a particular meaning or an intended meaning that you want from the text. And that becomes a proof text. And what Furtick does, and this is what I want you guys to be aware of, is that he over-allegorizes many of the passages that he teaches from, and then eventually becomes a book or whatever. It's like an over-spiritualizing something. And so Furtick is and this is what's so sad about it, because I know that he has had proper training in the past. I don't know how extensive, but at least I know that he knows what foundational hermeneutic principles are in his conservative training in Southern Baptist background. And you're not seeing it as much anymore because he's being influenced. And I've done many videos. I'll put some links in the description below of T.D. Jakes and Rod Parsley. Okay. So Furtick tends to find hidden meaning or symbols behind every verse of the Bible. Now, there's no doubt when you look at biblical literary form that you're going to have aspects of allegorizing. You'll see symbolism, and we have to take those things appropriately and to not misrepresent them. Okay, and take them out of their intended purpose. So he exercises this frequently in his sermons. He selects these nuances, and he prefers a particular meaning. So again, like he was saying, and I agree with him, you don't take a header that was not in the original text. But over time, with transliteration and translations, we put headers in there to tell you what the passage is about. And yet, he's not really dealing with the passage, and he's dealing with the header, and then he speaks to Satan about it. Like he proves some magical point when it was just saying, look, this passage is about 2 blind men who get healed. They were blind and now they can see. So let's do this. I'm just going to show you guys real briefly, when you look at the text, when it says that, behold, there were 2 blind men sitting on the roadside. Now, my header here says Jesus heals 2 blind men. Are we going to say Jesus heals 2 bold men? Because notice what he was saying in the towards the end about how he allegorized it or over spiritualized it. People will memorize your past and not look at what God has done in the future. That's not what the text is about. In fact, if you notice something in the text, this is mentioned in the synoptic gospels, all three of them. And you don't really get this a whole lot from Furtick. He is focusing on this nuance of a header that he doesn't like. And all it's just saying is, look, these guys were blind and now they can see. Why? Because Jesus healed them. Why? Because they cried out, Son of David. Why is that so significant? That's significant because they're calling him the Messiah. And what's so significant about this is it's prophetic. That's the main thing about the passage. Now, there's no denying that Furtick believes that these men were healed. I commend him on that point. But focusing on the phrase Son of David that they were boldly proclaiming as blind men, even though they're told to shut up and be quiet, they were affirming him as the Messiah. 2 Samuel chapter 7, 12, 13. When your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, you who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. That's what they were pronouncing to Jesus. That's what he should have been focusing on mainly, instead of worrying about this ridiculous header that was just explaining what the context in that passage is going to tell you about. In order for them to be healed, they needed something to be healed from. And in this case, specifically, it was blindness. That's that. Okay? So we have to be very, very cautious when it comes to Steven Furtick in his teaching. All right, let's do this now. Let's look at this last one. And this is an interesting thing about now where he's talking about Jesus not healing because the power of unbelief traps the power of God in Jesus. Take a listen.
The power of God was in Jesus. The healing power of God, the restoring power of God, the same power that made demons flee was in Nazareth, but Jesus could not release it because it was trapped in their unbelief. And there's one thing that even Jesus can't do. One thing that even the Son of God can't do. Even Jesus cannot override your unbelief. I see y'all looking at me like, is that true? Thought he could do anything. He said he could not. He wanted to, he was prepared to, he was able to, and he couldn't. The power of God was in Nazareth, but it was trapped in their perspective. The power of God was in Jesus. The healing power of God.
When you see what this sermon's about, and you look at the text, now I agree with him that yes, Jesus cannot override someone's will, okay? But let's look at the text here. And what it says here in the Bible is that when Jesus came into his hometown and his disciples followed him, and on the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many who heard him were astonished, saying, where did this man get these things? What is the wisdom given to him? How are such mighty works done by his hands? So notice they are not only confirming that he has done mighty works, but they're also affirming that he's doing things of God, and they don't know why he's able to do it. Because notice in verse 3, is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? So these are things, my friends, that we have to understand when Jesus hears this from them, and he says in verse 4 that a prophet is not without honor, except in his hometown and among his relatives and in his own household. And then it says in verse 5, he could do no mighty work there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. So notice he doesn't mention that in a sermon. He doesn't emphasize that. It just says his power was trapped by their perspective. And it says he marveled because of their unbelief. So yes, he recognizes that they believe that he did mighty works, and he could not do mighty works there. And it wasn't because it was trapped. And this is what is so important for us to understand, my friends, that I want to leave you with this thought. Furtick kept saying the power of God, the healing power of God was in Jesus. Jesus, who's the second person of the Trinity, is God. And this is sometimes alarming with Furtick because it's like, I I hope and I do see a lot of his sermons where he's believing and affirming the triune Godhead, the God man. Jesus is fully God and fully man. But then in statements like this, it's almost like he was possessing the power of the Father in him because Jesus is merely just a manifestation of God in the flesh. That is heretical. That gets into modalism. Jesus is God. Therefore, in, by, and through his divine nature, he can heal. So again, I agree with Furtick that Jesus can't override a person's free will. Jesus can't go against his divine nature. He made us human free agents. Therefore, he can't manipulate a person's free will. But to say that God's power was trapped in their unbelief is a very dangerous way to interpret the passage. You know what trapped means? It means to be enclosed or to be contained by a space or in another substance. So that implies that Jesus's power was actually entrapped. It was not just being prevented, but it was being contained by a greater power. There is nothing that can restrict, trap, or contain God. Here's the issue. It wasn't that Jesus couldn't produce miracles. It was that he chose not to perform any miracles due to the people's scandalous sin. Yes. Contextually, again, proper hermeneutics, the word that is used, it says they took offense at Jesus. How can it be that this man does such mighty works? They're confirming and affirming that he's doing them. And that can only be of God. They're Jewish people that believe in the divine power of God. But this is a carpenter's son. And so it offended them. The word is scandalizo. It meant that it caused them to sin. It caused them to fall away. The fact that he was doing these miracles and they couldn't explain it, of somebody of low regard, of low status, a carpenter's son. And it literally means they turned away from the faith. So again, they believe these things, but they refuse to believe in him. And remember, this is important. Oftentimes when Jesus performed miracles or did signs or wonders, it was to confirm that he was a Messiah, but they didn't want to believe that. In John 2:11, it says this was the first sign, remember, at the wedding of Cana in Galilee? And it says that he manifested his glory. It was the first sign to point to his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Remember Nicodemus in John 3 says, we know that you're a prophet of God because of the signs and wonders that you do. So we know that you come from God. But here, they didn't want to believe that he could be the Messiah. He was showing confirmation, and they can authenticate it. So Jesus' power wasn't trapped in their rejection of him. It was their rejection of Jesus as the Messiah that prevented Jesus to heal them because they didn't want it. It wasn't that it was trapped in their perspective. If they acted in belief, Jesus would have responded in kind to heal. And notice it actually says that he did to some people because they did believe. So not all people did reject him. But because they acted in unbelief, this group that was denying him and were scandalous in their disbelief of him, they turned away from Jesus, and therefore he moved on from them. Has nothing to do with him being trapped by their perspective. My friends, as I close, and I appreciate you guys watching, and I just encourage each one of you guys to make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell, slap that bell so you can get notifications every time we drop another video to help you stand strong in your faith. Here's what we need to be reminded of. When you have a preacher like Steven Furtick doing a proof text, to take that nuance, to make it seem like our unbelief or what we do is almost as powerful as God, he's putting too much weight on you and me. And he's diminishing the glory of God by taking things out of context. So those are just two examples of red flags in the preaching of Steve Furtick. So I pray that you guys better understand that. Pray for him. And if you have been influenced in any way, shape, or form by Steve Furtick, please let us know in the comments. I love to see what you guys have to say. Let's be respectful. Let's be mindful. But let's come and approach this with wise thinking and bold living. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Keep having those bold conversations with other people.